Transgender issues and exposure seem outsized for such a small group in America.
It is a really well-financed and immensely powerful movement that is just totally disproportionate for the population that it represents.
And where there's media, there's money.
Where you have really just a handful of organizations and LGBT advocacy organizations that are driving the agenda.
This week, we follow the money to find the influencers.
2 years ago, we visited a town in Israel that claimed what seemed oddly then to be the bomb shelter capital of the world. Then, October 7th happened. Israelis who are still living near the border with Gaza are living in constant fear.
We've never dealt with terrorists running up and down the street.
And by staying, send a message of defiance.
And in America's classrooms, an experiment is underway.
I am stoked about it.
It's getting a lot of positive response.
Are you getting applications from people out of state, from far away, that know about the 4-day week?
Absolutely.
We look at the 4-day school week and why it could be coming to a classroom near you. Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. We begin with an investigation into the forces working to shape our information landscape when it comes to transgender policies. When an issue goes from 0 to 60 practically overnight, grabbing headlines, political real estate, and funding priorities, you can bet there's an invisible hand in play. Today, some of the surprising interests we found behind the well-funded Transgender Lobby. In December of 2021, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling made news with a tweet. She criticized replacing the word women with the trans-friendly phrase, people who menstruate. Rowling suffered a backlash, was called transphobic, and even threatened with violence, she says. Hers is hardly a fringe view. A recent survey shows a majority of Americans, 71%, believe there are only 2 genders, male and female. But expressing that has become increasingly forbidden.
How such a small slice of America, or what was a very small slice of America, could take front and center stage in education and media and politics over a pretty short period of time is an interesting question.
Yeah, it's curious.
Gregory Angelo, a gay man, is president of the New Tolerance Campaign, a group fighting what he calls intolerance double standards.
People who think that this is a grassroots movement that is giving rise to the transgender culture in the United States, this transgender moment that people say that we're having, do not understand that this is more of a top-down dynamic that is at play, where you have really just a handful of organizations and LGBT advocacy organizations that are driving the agenda. But because they have such sway and such money, they're influencing everything from schools to politicians to corporate America.
The very least that you can say is it's not organic. This is not something that's happening on its own. It's not just the winds of change blowing in. This is orchestrated. This is deliberate.
Pedro Gonzalez is an independent journalist. He conducted an investigation to get to the bottom of the sudden explosion in trans ideology.
The name of the report that I wrote about this for the American Principles Project is called the Transgender Leviathan. I chose that name on purpose. The Leviathan, this biblical monster that's just enormous. You can only ever catch glimpses of the full size of it, right?
So tell me what you've learned about the big forces behind the funding.
Yeah, so I think you can broadly name 3, which is pharmaceutical companies, liberal billionaires, and ultimately, I think to a growing extent, the taxpayer.
When it comes to taxpayers, Gonzalez points to studies the government funds, like one promoting breast removal or mastectomies for young girls as part of a process to transition.
But I think the far larger and more pernicious problem is the problem of the pharmaceutical companies are behind this stuff. And there's so much.
One example is Lupron, the drug most commonly used for suppressing puberty.
It's a first step under one model of treating children who wish to be the opposite sex.
It's not FDA approved for use in transition therapy, right? It's used to castrate basically the most dangerous kinds of sex offenders who just can't help themselves and are most likely to reoffend. So they give them Lupron to basically chemically castrate them. And now we're giving it to kids to suppress the process of them going into puberty.
With 2 injections reportedly costing as much as $73,000, Lupron drew $2 billion worth of business last year for drug maker AbbVie.
The Biden administration cited a study produced by a group called the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project is an LGBT advocacy nonprofit. And basically, the Biden administration said, like, this study from this nonpartisan nonprofit says that it's important for children to be able to have access to gender-affirming care, right? But when you look at the funding of the Trevor Project, what you'll see is that they actually received $50,000 from AbbVie Foundation, the company that manufactures Lupron.
We found an even bigger medical money interest surrounding the trans movement. It involves a little publicized but sad reality, the transgender HIV epidemic. In 7 major U.S. cities, more than 40% of transgenders are infected with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. The rate is even higher among transgender blacks. Most of them, 62%, are HIV positive, according to the CDC survey. That adds up to a lucrative market for businesses like Gilead Sciences, a pharmaceutical company that's developed 11 HIV medications now on the market, earning over $1.5 billion a month. And Gilead happens to be the single biggest known funder of the trans agenda. More than $6 million in 2017 and 2018. Gilead says its goal is to support communities that are disproportionately impacted by diseases aligned with our therapeutic areas of focus. The number 2 funder of trans causes at $4.8 million over 2 years is Arcus Foundation. Arcus is a nonprofit associated with billionaire John Stryker, heir to the Stryker Corporation, medical technology company Fortune, and a driver of gender identity ideology and transgenderism across the globe. Third, $4.6 million, is Tawani Foundation, associated with the billionaire Pritzker family and James, now Jennifer Pritzker, of the Hyatt Hotels fortune. Tawani has large medical investments and funds causes that normalize transgenderism and a broad spectrum of identities. And number 4 among top donors to trans interests is Gill Foundation at $3.1 million, associated with American software magnate and gay activist Tim Gill. He's the single largest known donor to gay causes at $500 million total. The money from a handful of sources seeds thousands of groups, reaching into policies and practices in government and education, and at corporations, universities, doctors' associations, hospitals, insurance companies, media outlets, journalism groups, and more. Top recipients of the trans-targeted money include the University of Minnesota, home to Gender and Sexuality Center for Queer and Trans Life.
There's a huge amount of diversity in the experience of trans people in terms of identities, in terms of gender journeys, and we're going to do our best in this course to try to make as much room as possible for all of those various identities.
Another top beneficiary is Annenberg Center for Health Sciences at Eisenhower. It sponsors programs like this one for healthcare professionals.
Hello and welcome to the Elevate webinar series on creating a gender-affirming healthcare environment for optimal HIV care.
Funding for transgender causes continues to hit new highs each year. By one analysis, the top 10 foundations that give the most made up 55% of the funding. In the end, the explosion in transgender influence on society and politics can largely be traced to a handful of powerful interests.
It's far from a movement that's just comprised of a bunch of scrappy underdogs. It is a really well-financed and immensely powerful movement that is just totally disproportionate for the population that it represents.
This past week, advocates filed suit on behalf of 2 girls, including a 10-year-old, who were getting treatment to block puberty or suppress their female traits. They're suing University of Missouri Healthcare, which stopped treating children after the state banned certain medical procedures for minors. Ahead on Full Measure, why are some Israelis staying in place amid terrorist attacks? Israel's counterattacks on the Islamic extremist group Hamas have drawn a lot of sympathetic media coverage about Gaza, from which the Palestinian terrorists launched their initial attacks. Today, Scott Thuman revisits an Israeli town that was nearly destroyed and where some residents have chosen to stay, living in fear.
October 7, Hamas terrorists crossed from the Gaza Strip into Israel, launching the infamous deadly attack on towns and villages, including the southern city of Sderot, just 1 mile from the border. Armed with automatic weapons and rockets, the Iranian-backed terror group attacked and killed civilians in their cars, shot at them in store parking lots, and gunned down members of the local police force. Today, Sderot is nearly empty. The majority of the 30,000 residents living here evacuated by the Israeli military. American-born Stuart Gonyelin and his Israeli wife Etty among a few thousand to stay. We spoke to them on Zoom from Sderot to find out why many Israelis have refused to leave their homes.
But you need to force yourself to go out, and you need to force yourself to do things, and that's what you do.
For nearly 20 years, the Gonyelins have lived in Sderot under constant threat of attack from Hamas rockets, also called Qassams, targeting nearby Israelis in a decades-long war.
In the past, we've always dealt with Qassams, but we've never dealt with terrorists running up and down the street, killing everybody that they could see.
You lived with the fear of sometimes a singular rocket being launched into your town. Now you're saying you worry about terrorists in your streets.
I'm scared. I'm scared. You're scared from everything now because this is different situation.
There were fewer unknowns when we first visited Sderot in 2021, and when a Hamas attack meant seeking shelter in one of hundreds of these windowless cement structures adorned with scenic murals, bomb shelters, all 286 of them, on almost every corner, near each bus stop, school, and business. Even the playgrounds here double as a safe space for when rockets fly, which is why Sderot is known as the bomb shelter capital of the world.
Is this here in Sderot? Yeah.
It seems almost everyone has some sort of video like this on their phones of incoming rockets, accompanied by sirens and a mad dash to get to a shelter immediately. So if the siren went off, if the alarm went off, you just leave everything and run?
Yes. You always have the fear that something is going to explode in your house or something.
We also met Ephraim Rosenfeld. Life in Sderot, he told us, is measured in seconds.
The siren goes off, and if we're lucky, we have 15 seconds to get to a shelter.
But when Hamas attacked Sderot in October, there were no sirens or warnings. Now the small community still here is living in fear.
You can drive down the street today and see a little white pickup truck. And you look at that truck, and that's the same color truck that the terrorists were in, and you wonder who's in that truck. So everybody becomes suspect.
If I'm going in the dark and I see someone coming near me, I'm scared. I don't know if it's terrorist or not. The fear, it's controlling you.
How do you live in those circumstances?
We all suffer from accumulative traumatic stress disorder because this has been going on for 20 some odd years. There has never been a day that you don't think about it, a day that a dog barks or a door slams, you don't jump. And I hate to say it becomes normal of sitting on the edge of your seat.
Why do you stay?
I said to myself that I'm not going to let anyone take me for my home. This is my home. And I'm not supposed to give up at my home.
From that home, Stuart and Eddie run a charity called Hope for Sderot, founded to help injured locals with food and clothing donations shortly after Hamas first started attacking with rockets in 2008. For this city, that help is more critical now than ever.
You have 20,000, 30,000 people that are all in the same boat. Nobody has worked for a good month and a half.
Leaving this couple wondering what will happen next. What do you see as your future there?
Not words anymore. This is our dream.
Stuart, what do you see as the future there for you?
That's a really good question. As long as Hamas is there, I don't see there being peace. I would hope and pray that the people of Gaza could get a government that was level-headed, that loved their children more than they loved killing Jews, and wanted a future for their kids.
With supposedly about 10% of the population of Sderot left, what happens now, do you think, with the city? Will people come back, or will it stay just very small?
Well, it's a good question. When we were there in 2021, the town was still mourning the loss of a 5-year-old boy who'd just been killed in a rocket attack, and hundreds of other residents there in Sderot have died the same way. But it is a resilient place. It's got a pretty decent economy for its size. It's more affordable than living in a big city like Tel Aviv. And Stuart and Eddie insist that it will come back eventually.
All right, Scott, thanks a lot. Important update. Coming up, an extra day off for school kids. America's post-COVID school landscape continues to evolve. More and more school districts are suffering teacher shortages. One solution being tried is a 4-day school week. Today we visit the biggest school district in Missouri that's implemented the new schedule to ask why they think it's a game changer. When 14,000 kids went back to school in Independence, Missouri this year, it was on a brand new schedule, a 4-day school week.
I am stoked about it.
Abby Stout, a new mom, teaches 6th grade math. What kind of incentive is it for you to stay?
I just finished my 10th year of teaching. So my first 7 years of teaching, I looked for different jobs because it was very overwhelming. You want to do your best job, but there's a lot of things going on, and trying to keep balanced work life is very difficult. So when they moved to a 4-day week, it was very much something that made me want to stay, 1, in education, but 2, in this district.
Hundreds of American school districts are now on a 4-day schedule. That's up nearly 50% over 3 years ago. It means slightly longer school days and Mondays off, translating to a 3-day weekend all year. Dale Hurl, superintendent of the Independence, Missouri School District, says it's a strong selling point.
As far as teachers leaving our school district year over year, it is down, our retirements and resignations, more than 40%. And then you look at the number of applications that we've received compared to the same time last year, and it's more than double.
And are you getting applications from people out of state, from far away, that know about the 4-day week?
Absolutely. So we're very unique in that they can come to Independence, teach 4 days a week, and still have a very competitive salary that maybe it looks different, not as high of a salary if they were in more of a rural part of the state.
Can you give me just an idea of salary ranges?
For us here in Independence, our beginning teacher salary is just a little bit over $41,000. If you go all the way to the right, which means all the way if you have a doctorate and down on the salary schedule, so the most amount of years you can earn, I believe it's about $83,000.
I am super excited.
First grade teacher Laurie Countryman is in her 24th year of teaching.
Did you hear any objections from teachers or parents?
Yes, I was very surprised to hear from colleagues that were negative about it. If you're a parent, a single mom of 4 children, you might be a little worried to think, what am I going to do that 5th day?
For the families that need help, what do they have to pay to have someone take the child or do something with the child on that 5th day?
So some of our activities, there's no cost. So what we call Learning League, that's for those kids that are grade level or more behind their peers. There's no charge for that, and we will transport those kids to the school. Tutoring, there's no charge. All of our clubs, there's no charge. The only thing that we will charge our parents for, and that is what we would consider pure child care.
For that, the district is offering child care for $30 a day. High school teacher Steve Cassidy.
Was there a point during COVID or in the last couple of years you thought to yourself maybe you didn't want to stick out teaching or maybe you'd retire?
I think that probably crossed every teacher's mind during COVID, to be honest. I don't know that I ever seriously considered retiring, but I'm close to retirement age and could actually retire. So the 4-day week does keep me plugged into education. I've decided to stay in education, and it really, I think, will encourage a lot of teachers to stay.
In Independence, the school week is Tuesday through Friday, but on Monday, high school students now have the chance to earn up to 12 college credit hours at the local community college. After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? An update to our reporting on the January 6th pro-Trump rally and U.S. Capitol riots. The new Republican leader of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, has approved the posting of 44,000 hours of Capitol Hill security video that has long been withheld from the public, and that posting has already begun. In a statement, Johnson stated, "This decision will provide millions of Americans, criminal defendants, public interest organizations, and the media an ability to see for themselves what happened that day, rather than having to rely on the interpretation of a small group of government officials." Our Full Measure analysis of a limited amount of video previously available revealed apparent coordination between key agitators and police. Some of the agitators, dressed as Trump supporters, first appeared from behind police lines. They conferred with police, then were allowed to join the crowd and become leaders, breaking through the police line. One of them instigated a violent attack, breaking a glass window, leading to Capitol Police Lieutenant Michael Byrd shooting and killing unarmed protester Ashley Babbitt. The FBI hasn't answered how many agents and informants were dressed as protesters in the crowd. You can search online for January 6th Reading Room to find out how you can view videos and request clips. Coming up next week on Full Measure, after major controversy over policing in recent years, is the push to defund turning into a push to refund?
You want to be protected, and you want to feel safe as you go about and enjoy the community that is home for you.
How rising crime levels are impacting the national agenda next week on Full Measure. I'll see you next week, everybody. Thanks for watching.